So can we go back to studies, since you did quote Eric Edmonds, right?
I did not.
Before you
Please
quoted
stop
that other
saying
person.
that. Please stop saying that.
No, you did.
And again, we can look at pardon me, Edmonds and Pavnik, 2005.
And
no, I did
so
not.
the conclusion that Eric...
Please stop lying.
The conclusion that Eric Edmonds, I'm speaking, the conclusion that he comes to, if you don't want to read it right now, is because of this impact of child labor on economic growth, there is a strong case that child labor policy should be a part of policy efforts to promote sustainable development without appealing to human rights issues, even though those issues can be important.
This is your tag team championship matchup. On one side is the tag team made up of two Ancaps known for status everywhere. They don't like the government and they don't like you. They're the fedora tipping duo, Fabian Liberty and last username, the Market Justice Warriors. And in the opposite corner are two lefties standing up for VTubers everywhere. Two people who know how to flip a buck at the earliest sign of drama. They are Chud Logic and Eristocracy. Toontown.
And we are back with both tag teams. I'm going to now start with the rules of today's match. Welcome both of you, all of you, all four of you, for the first ever tag team championship match. I would like to welcome you all. So the rules are simple. They're hippy dippy standard rules. You do not talk over me while I'm talking. You do not do any attacks on people's inheritable characteristics. You can't be like, hey, look at this dumb fucking cartoon. I understand. I feel it too, but we cannot do that tonight. Okay? We are not allowed any VTuber discrimination because their civil rights organizations have got involved. Ugh, whatever. And advertisers, of course. But that's the basic rules. I don't think I need to explain it to all of you because all of you have been participants of my events for so long. And so we're probably just going to go straight into it since you've already been introduced. The topic is child labor, and should it be legal? I think we all agree that's the topic. Should it be legal? Okay.
Right, sure.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
So, since they are arguing in the affirmative, I'm going to allow Market Justice Warriors to go first. I'm going to give you guys a minute and 30 seconds in that range. Just try to keep a clock. I got to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
You gave us 5 minutes when you discussed this before.
I'm sorry. I forgot. I'm sorry.
I thought we were arguing whether or not there's child labor laws are okay or a good thing.
Well, yes.
Right.
If you believe they're legal, if they should be legal, then we shouldn't have child labor laws. Yes.
Yes. Last username or I are saying to abolish child labor laws.
Based. Giga Chad. Let's go.
Okay,
we have 5 minutes.
So you got.
Sorry,
we have 5 minutes.
Okay.
As long as
Everybody, shut the fuck up. We are running on a very tight schedule. 5 minutes. Fabian, go.
Username first.
Okay, either. It doesn't matter. Go.
Thank you, Dylan. Okay, it's very easy to say, think of the children, right? Think of the children. I think you're going to hear our opponents saying that a lot tonight. They're going to tell you about children toiling away in sweatshops and mines, and they will make you feel like, I don't like that. Make it go away. Make it go away. That's understandable. The people in the developing world are a lot like you and me, right? They are not evil. They're not stupid. They care about their own lives, and they really care about their children. Okay? Just like us. Just like us, they're trying to give themselves and their children the best life they can. And they're trying to do that in circumstances that are very tough and very difficult for us in the developed world to understand and appreciate. When a child has a job, it's probably for a good reason. Okay, it's probably because the best option available to the child is to have that job. And however bad that may seem that that kid has to work, the alternative is probably worse. Okay, when you, in your infinite virtue and wisdom, step in and say, no, you can't try to help yourself in this particular way because it makes me feel uncomfortable, you are condemning that child to that worse alternative. Okay? When something that people need is outlawed, people go around the law to get it. The child needs to work in order to survive, and they can't get a legal job, they will get an illegal job. And in that illegal job, the child is likely to lose whatever other protections the law would otherwise provide them. Things like workplace safety regulations or contract law, or even their basic personal rights they're not going to have if they're working underground, okay? If you don't like the idea of a child working a legal job, you should be far more upset by the idea of a child working in the black market. But when you impose child labor laws on a society that cannot yet afford to have children not work, that's exactly what you are doing. You're condemning those children to work in the black market. It sucks that there's still societies in the world like this. And if you want to talk about how to solve poverty, yeah, great. So do I. I'd love to do that. Because that's the only way to end child labor, to get people wealthy enough that they can afford to end it. Until then, please don't sabotage the lives of poor people just to make your rich ass feel more virtuous. Hand it over to Scott.
Yeah. So, my debate partner here is giving forth the argument, and what I want to do throughout this debate in the intro as well is give some of the data so that we understand this, because a good argument is a good argument, but without data to back it up, it's not there. And fortunately for us, almost all of the data, tons of studies and surveys and organizations absolutely support our opinions. So just one example of that to begin with is in 1992, Senator Harkin, he proposed a bill known as the Child Labor Deterrence Act. Fortunately, it did not pass. And this bill was designed to boycott goods from countries where the ready-made garment industry was using child labor. Unfortunately, what did happen is in Bangladesh, the individuals that were hiring these children for about 53 cents an hour, I know it sounds horrible, right? They fired roughly 50,000 of them. And in 1997, both Oxfam and UNICEF did a study to find out, well, what happened to these children that were fired from child labor? And what they found was that a majority of them ended up homeless, ended up in worse jobs where they were more likely to be injured in agriculture and the service industry. And most importantly, thousands of young girls disappeared into child sex trafficking and prostitution. And I'll finish off our conversation by quoting Nobel Prize winning left-wing economist Paul Krugman talking about this very issue of what happened in Bangladesh. The direct result was that Bangladeshi textile factories stopped employing children. But did the children go back to school? Did they return to happy homes? Not according to Oxfam, which found that the displaced child workers ended up in even worse jobs or on the streets, and then a significant number were forced into prostitution. And I yield my time.
Okay, now Toontown, you will be allotted 5 minutes as well. You can start in any way you want.
All right. So child labor is inherently exploitative by definition, right? I think our opponents are arguing for youth employment. So there is a bit of a definitional issue here. But for the sake of the argument, I'll expand it to, to any form of youth employment. So child labor is a violation of human rights and has been demonstrated time and time again to hinder children's development, potentially leading to severe lifelong physical or psychological damage. Evidence points to a strong link between household poverty and childhood labor, and child labor perpetuates poverty across generations by keeping low socioeconomic children out of education and limiting their prospects for upward social mobility. So this lowering of the entire human capacity of a society has been linked to slow economic growth and social development for both developing and non-developing countries. Recent studies by the ILO, which is the International Labor Organization, have demonstrated that the move towards the elimination of child labor and developing economies could generate a large economic benefits, far greater than the costs, which are mostly associated with investment in better schooling and social services. So therefore, child labor laws are a useful tool that should not be abandoned, not just for the betterment of children, as my opponents thought that I was going to be arguing, right? Or for their dignity, but for the betterment of society as a whole. And I'd like Chud to now speak.
Okay, really simple. Child labor laws are necessary to prevent perverse incentives that will lead children to dangerous, exploitative circumstances. At the end of the day, this comes down to consent. If you think children can consent to all forms of labor without any legal oversight, I'd have to ask the Ancaps, what else do you think children can consent to?
Is that your ending of your opening study? Okay, so now it is an open period. You guys have about an
Why
hour.
do you guys think there should be 13-year-old strippers?
Pause. I'm going to answer aristocracies before I go to your meme question, but don't worry, I have an answer.
It's a serious
for you.
question. I
No,
didn't
it's
listen
not.
to opening
No, it's
statements
not.
because it was
If
fucking
you don't-
snooze
if you
shit.
don't- Pause.
What do you
Chud
want
Logic.
13-year-old
Chud
strippers?
Logic.
Important
Chud Logic.
Wait.
Chud Logic.
Tell me about the
If you
13-year-old
can't tell
strippers.
the-
Go on.
Chud Logic. If you can't tell the difference between someone working in the textile industry and sex prostitution and things like that, which you're hinting at, then I have a question. Are you a pedophile?
Well, no, I'm not a pedophile. You're the one that
Okay,
wants to
all right.
abolish
Well, then you know the
labor laws,
difference.
you
So
want
shut
child
the fuck up.
prostitutes,
No,
and
you know
want
there's
to
a
use
difference.
strippers.
Chud,
There's no
I think
legislation.
you asked a reasonable question. What can a
Yeah,
child
I did.
consent
Thank you.
to?
Thank you.
So let me ask you this. Do you think a child could consent to, say, go to school?
I don't. Well, I think a child can consent to go to school, yeah, but that's a place of like safety
Okay.
and learning for them, isn't it? It's not being a stripper. Are you saying that going to school
Right.
is like
And-
being a stripper for a kid? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I don't think a child can be a stripper. I would not like that at all. I don't
Okay.
think that should be legal. But
Sure,
we're
that's
not talking
great, but
about
then how-
children being strippers? We're talking about children being able to work at a job.
Okay,
a
but you
normal
say you
job.
want to abolish child labor laws. Child labor laws are the thing that stops children from being strippers.
All right. So
No,
we have
I'm
to
pretty
deal.
sure child
we have to,
sexual exploitation laws are what prevent that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to deal with the low IQ memes of Chud Logic before we can get to a serious debate with
So
aristocracy.
under an Ancap
So
society,
let's-
would there be laws or not? I thought it was anarchism.
So here's how you have to understand,
child
and
labor
I
laws
understand.
is what we're talking about.
Here's
We're
no,
talking about
what
all
we're
laws.
talking about is consent, right? That's the question that you're asking, and you don't understand how libertarians have consent because you haven't read about it, and I understand that.
Well, no,
So
'cause
let me
it's
educate
a meme.
you.
It's a meme ideology. It's a waste of time, isn't it?
Right. You're memeing.
Forget
I
about
get
it.
it.
Doesn't matter.
Let me
Libertarians
explain
don't matter. We're only talking about child labor laws here.
I get
We're
it. You
not
want
talking about
13-year-old
making
strippers. I
children
get
into
it. It's
strippers.
fine. I get it. Listen, I know that's what you want. It's all good. Anyway, sorry, I've talked a lot. Let someone else talk.
Yeah. So again, you're memeing and you're not having a serious debate, and I don't know why you're here if that's all you're going to do. But anyways, if you want to talk about why children can consent to a paper route, right, and why children can't consent to being child strippers, it's a very simple thing, right? A libertarian philosophy of children's rights is based off of the idea that children are emerging adults. Right? They are not yet adults because they are not psychologically able to express their will. And so parents are considered guardians or custodians of their will and of their rights. Now, so under certain circumstances, such as bad economic circumstances, or because let's say they want the child to work in the family restaurant sometimes, or they want the kid to have a paper route, or they want the kid to be able to go out and cut grass in the neighborhood. The reason parents are allowed as custodians of their rights and their will to let them do these things is because they are not inherently exploitative given the circumstances in which they live under. In the textile industry, that is abject poverty where they are trying to get food. In America, that's something like cutting grass or a paper route or a lemonade stand. The fact of the matter is the moment that you use your power as a parent, as a guardian of the custodian of the child's will and rights to subject them to physical damage of their body or to subject them to psychological trauma of being in the sex industry as a child, you forego your rights as
There's
a
lot of
parent
words
over
here.
this.
Jesus Christ, get to the point, bro. What the fuck?
Right.
Here's the
You,
point,
you
Chud.
started
We
realizing that I was right.
There's lots
and
of
then
things
you
that we make
interrupted.
children do, right? We make them go to
All I
school.
hear you is
we
trying to
eat their
justify
broccoli.
13-year-old
We make
strippers.
them
It's all
do
I
these
can hear.
things
You're a
because we
fucking
think
liar.
it's
Stop.
in their best interest, right? We know it's good for kids to eat broccoli. It's good for them to go to school. They may not like it. It may be hard. It may be stressful even. But we do it because it's in their best interest. It's good for their lives. And unfortunately, there are places in the world where that are poor enough where a kid going to work and making money for the family is actually in their best interest.
Damn, both
I
of
don't
you even
see
chip in
why.
to
That's
defeat
a
me
huge
in the
claim that you
battleground of
just
ideas.
made, that it's in their best
Okay.
interest. Can you actually
Because if they
substantiate
don't,
that?
they'll starve or be homeless. Like these,
Yes.
they need to.
Wait, are there other
So-
alternatives to
So
getting food?
aristocracy, did you get most of your debate
If
resources
there
from
were
the
alternatives,
ILO?
they'd be doing them.
I'm just curious. Did you get most of your information from the ILO surveys for tonight?
Some of my information from the ILO surveys, but
Okay,
I got
right.
it basically from the entire structure of the current literature on
Okay,
the subject.
well, that's fine. You have
There's a
other sources,
consensus.
right?
There's an international consensus on child labor laws.
Right. So what we know about the ILO, right, unlike let's say World Bank surveys, is that they're a lot more focused on getting rid of child labor completely, and they're very ideologically biased in that regard. So when you actually dig into ILO papers, right, as opposed to just reading like their large reports, you can look and see that a lot of the data that they put in their large reports is not actually accurate once you go into the report. So, for example, you can look at the Ugandan survey, right? And what the ILO will say is, oh, they have 35% child labor, right? But when you actually go into it, what you actually find is that unlike the World Bank, that's considering child labor to be 14 and below, they're considering anyone that is a day under 18 to be child labor, number one. And number two, they're considering anyone that is under a day younger than 18 that has a part-time job to be part of child labor. So me, when I was working at Burger King, right, and I was in high school, would be considered someone that is being exploited via child labor. So
That's not
there
true.
are some issues with using ILO data, and the way that they do their studies is not necessarily accurate. And so, like, I would say, like, maybe we shouldn't be using that necessarily as a resource.
Well, I think the data
moving
sounds
forward.
good.
But,
I think
did you
I
do
like
me a
ILO
favor,
data.
FL
Let's
Scott?
use that. It sounds good to me.
Right, of
I'm
course.
supporting Eris on that
could
point.
could you Google child labor definition and just read out the definition for us?
You want me to give Google's definition? Hold on, I don't know how long it's been since I've actually used Google. I got to get it off of DuckDuckGo, guys. So
Oh.
Why are you on
I'm not
DuckDuckGo?
sure why you want to. I'm not sure why you do
searches?
it. So
Why are you trying
child
to
labor.
searches going on DuckDuckGo? Interesting.
All right. So what is Google's definition of child labor? I'm not giving a specific definition so far. Let me put in definition. The use of children in industry or business, especially when illegal or considered inhumane. That's Google's definition.
Considered inhumane is a part of the definition. Therefore, the concept of child labor does not equal youth employment. You seem to think that
No, I'm
child
talking
labor
about
means
ILO's
youth
data.
employment, right? And you guys didn't argue. Let's debate youth employment, right? I would be
Aristocracy.
like, okay, that's a different story, right? But you
No,
argue child labor,
aristocracy.
which is
No,
inherently.
you just
listen,
proved
please,
my
I didn't
point.
interrupt you.
Wait,
I didn't interrupt you.
We'll let
right?
aristocracy go.
Right. When it comes to the actual definition, right?
Mhm.
The definition that the ILO uses, okay, is the definition that's internationally recognized, right? Which you actually just read out, which they might use different words, but it all basically means the same thing, that child labor is a specific type of youth employment that is inherently exploitative, right? Which is obviously subjective based on people's moral standards, etc., right? And this is why you have different child labor laws, right, in different locations. It's one of the use of child labor laws because you can kind of change it, right, depending on what's useful and what's important for that society as a whole. For example, there used to be a huge problem with child labor in the 19th century, particularly when it came to here, let me find this 1 second.
Well, while you're looking for that, two things real quick.
No, 1 second.
One, you proved my point.
There
You
used
said
to
you were
be
looking for
a
something.
childhood labor issue, particularly when it came to children working in cotton mills, right? And then if they found out and children would regularly be hired for cotton mills because they could only get into the smallest areas and they could also be paid incredibly lowly, right? So to this day, we still have rules that there are specific rules that it's harsher. It's harder to, as a child, to work in a cotton mill than it is to work, say, as an actor in a studio, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm so shocked that you guys agreed to argue this, right? Because you could actually say that all childhood youth employment is fine, but let's just ban one thing, and then we would just win the debate because at least it's had one kind of use.
Right. So two things. Number one, by asking me to give this definition that you want to use as the internationally recognized definition, right? You prove my point about what I was saying about the ILO, right? Because they report numbers that are not child labor. They include youth unemployment, which was what I was trying to explain to you. So I appreciate you proving me
They
right
don't
there.
do that.
The second thing that I wanted to say is that no, what we're debating is child labor laws. We're not debating child labor and youth unemployment, right? Because child labor laws can affect both child labor and youth unemployment. And so that's the distinction here, is that the debate is about child labor laws.
Do you think 6-year-olds should be able to work?
Should be able to work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty hard for them to work.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine a scenario where it would make sense.
No, answer my question. If there was a suitable job that was found for a 6-year-old, you want to abolish all child labor laws, so you think a 6-year-old should be able to go and work somewhere, correct?
If my choice is between 6-year-old works or 6-year-old starves, I'll take work.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Fair enough.
No, wait. I'm not saying that's the choice.
What
I'm
circumstances
saying,
do you
I'm
think
saying,
a 6-year-old works?
Well, I don't know. You're the one that the thing that stops children from going to work is labor laws, and you want to abolish them. So presumably you would be fine with a 6-year-old going to work because you don't want to have labor laws for children.
The thing that stops them from working is not needing to, is being able to.
You know, I've seen 6-year-olds working, right? You know, in one of my visits to New York City and Chinatown.
What's with all that? Why can't you
right?
answer the question? It's a simple question, yes or no, but you can't.
Why are you interrupting me? Why are you interrupting me with more
the
memes?
fucking question because you know it makes you look terrible.
No, you're trying to engage in memes instead of a serious debate. I'm not dodging. I'm specifically giving.
Wait. Okay.
I'm specifically giving an example.
Okay. So one of the Hippy Dippy rules is when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. So I'm going to allow Fabian to respond, and then if you think he dodged Chud, then you can jump on him after he's done responding. Fabian?
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, so I've seen, there's two examples. One we all know about, and the one that's anecdotal, right? So I've seen 6-year-olds working. When I went to, visit one of the many times I went to New York City, I went deep into Chinatown, and I've seen 6-year-olds, maybe they were 7 or 8, very young, very, very young, small children helping out in the family business and learning a little bit of the trade, learning a little bit how customer service is done, and getting good, valuable experience that helped them with their family. And also because they're poor, which we will argue with tons of data, they probably couldn't afford daycare. And so they're there helping the family and learning how business works. And it's actually a positive thing. And also, of course, everyone in the audience has seen childhood actors. There are 6-year-old actors that are working in the entertainment industry.
There's a lot of words here.
You just keep saying I'm saying a lot of words, right? And I'm giving you
saying a lot of words. It's boring. I'm bored of you
arguments.
talking. I'm bored of you talking. I just want to say.
Well, if you're so bored, you should leave.
You want to concede? That's fine.
I'm not going to concede because you're fucking idiots. Here's the situation, okay? 6-year-old.
Can you substantiate that?
Substantiate what? You're a fucking idiot.
We said I'm a fucking idiot, so prove it.
Yeah, you're an Ancap, so there's your proof right there. So listen, here's the situation, okay? So
and what are you? A socialist, right? You must be an idiot.
Okay, well, that's just the Uno Reverso. Good one. Here's the situation, okay? There's no child labor laws, so a 6-year-old, in your mind then, can go and sign a contract to go and work for a company, and they can just go and work for that company, correct?
No.
Well, what's going to stop them if there's no law stopping them?
They're 6 years old. They don't have the ability to sign contracts.
They might stop them, or their parents might stop them, or
But there's no law to stop them.
I don't want my 6-year-old to do that.
There's no legal framework for which to stop them.
Do you think that parents hate their children? Do you think that parents of the third world hate their children, and that's why they send them to work? Like what?
Well, no, of course not. But what I'm saying to you, this is the whole point why labor laws are necessary, right? Because it prevents perverse incentives.
Because otherwise, parents would just send all the kids to work.
Parents do hate their children.
Wait! I didn't hear what Chud's response to the question was.
And also, some parents do hate their children, yeah. And some of them, because they're so poor, they would just see them as a way of sending them off to work, prevents them from going to school. And I think it's also worth noting, you keep pointing to the global south as some bastion of child labor rights or something like that. The UN is actually trying to abolish child labor globally because child labor is considered by most normal people who aren't totally fucking insane to be really bad. So actually the world
they're trying to
is working
abolish it.
against
Everybody
you.
wants to see child labor go away. I'm just saying that child labor laws are not a good
But you're saying there
that.
should be no laws whatsoever. So that would mean then
No, I don't think laws are going to help. They're not addressing the problem. You're just making
there's no laws in place there.
You're just hiding the
There's no laws in
symptom.
place that are going to prevent them from getting exploited. It's crazy.
Wait, stop.
Real quick.
Wait. Okay, I didn't hear anything last username said, so could you repeat that, please?
The problem is poverty. Poverty is what causes child labor. And making child labor laws is not going to make poverty go away. It's actually going to make it worse, okay? Poverty is a complicated problem. You can't solve it with these sort of knee-jerk, feel-good laws.
And
It's
I
a
don't think that
difficult
just
problem.
having unrepentant child labour without any legislation to protect children is good. I think we need to, at very least, have some measures in place to protect children if they absolutely have to engage in labour. But
So
you're
let's look at
suggesting an
Costa Rica.
abolishment.
Well, there are laws to protect them if they have to engage in labor.
What's Costa
But
Rica
in order
got
to
to
do
do
that,
with
their jobs have to be legal, right? You have to be working legally in order to have legal protections, things like workplace safety, or things like the law enforcing your contract, or making sure that your boss isn't violating your rights. In order to have that, it has to be a legal job. If they're working illegally and get paid under the table, they lose all that protection. It's a much worse situation.
This is exactly why we described
underground.
how children actually became what you like to meme as child strippers. It was child labor laws and the threat of child labor laws that created child strippers, not the other way around. As a matter of fact,
That's
in
not
Costa
true.
Rica,
That's not true.
no, I mean, I literally quoted Paul Krugman at you. Like, I can't give you
I don't
a
give
more
a shit about
friendly
Paul
source.
Krugman. Who even is that? Sounds like a fucking nerd.
Nobel Prize winning left wing economist,
blah,
and
blah.
also
I mean, Obama won a Nobel
1997
Prize,
UNICEF.
like-
Right. Oh, so well, let's look
boring.
at Costa Rica, right? So
Boring.
you brought the ILO again, right? Those surveys. So Costa Rica, for example, has child labor laws that says that children 15 under the age of 15 cannot work. And despite that, 43% of the youth labor in Costa Rica are under the age of 15. And we have countless examples of this from studies in America as well. There are a ton of studies, Golden and Katz 2003, that show that compulsory education laws and minimum wage laws that were designed to stop child labor in certain states in America compared to states that didn't have them had less than a 5% increase on the likelihood of high school attendance. And Moeling 1999 showed that there was no statistic difference in 1880, 1900, and 1910 in America between states that had child labor laws and states that didn't have child labor laws, and how much youth employment and child labor existed.
Not the laws that make it go away. It's the wealth.
Blah, 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 blah. Studies, boring. Okay, it's a
I
little
know,
fucking
they
bullshit.
are boring. It's true. Studies are really boring. The truth is really
Situation,
fucking
right?
boring. It's
Okay.
not nearly fun.
You're
But
solution
the
is saying.
scientific consensus,
Moralizing
even if studies are boring,
Wait.
right? I don't want them to come under this impression that like the studies are on their side. Like the consensus by historians, the consensus by international human rights experts, right? All agree that the studies are actually on our side, right? And I can demonstrate that, and it's not just from the ILO, right? Like one of the best studies is actually from Eric V. Emmons, okay, from Amherst Education. Here, I will post in chat.
Where are you posting? Oh, in the Discord chat?
Oh, I was posting it in Hippy Dippy. Oh, it didn't. Oops.
In voice
Well,
text, I'm assuming?
We're probably not going to be able to read a study right now, but if you could summarize it.
Right. So 218 million children work in the world today. 70% are in activities classified as child labor under local laws. While in policy circles, child labor is often viewed as a rights issue, it's also an economic issue. Right. Working children are both a cause and a consequence of a lack of economic development. Why? So they agreed with you on one end, right, that it is also a consequence, but it's also a cause. And it's very hard to figure out what ends up being the larger issue. This is why child labor laws are not the answer to poverty, but they're part of the answer to poverty. And if we look at, for example, the United States, in 1890, childhood labor reached basically its peak of where 18% of all children in the United States were being exploited in child labor. Right. By the 1930s, after a series of laws, right, that helped poverty, that helped work conditions, that employed women, right, and that also started to limit child labor, right, and make child labor more costly, childhood labor had actually dropped to 5%, right, and these are going by the very different definitions of the ILO that you claim the ILO was using, which was not even true.
Yeah. So again, it was, and to make your argument even stronger, it was 25% of boys and 18% of boys and girls in 1900. But again, the problem is that we actually have economists that look at, was there a statistically significant difference in states that had child labor laws and states that didn't have child labor laws? And what they found is there's no statistically significant difference. That completely defeats your argument, right? What the reason was, and the reason Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938 came about was while child labor was already well on its way out, is because what we have found over and over and over again is that once in today's dollars, we get a little bit over 10,000, 11,000. The number shifts a little bit based off of inflation. But once you get over around $10,000, $11,000 per person in terms of their income, child labor basically disappears, right? So it's an economic issue. And again, we can look at, Edmonds and Pavnik 2005 that found that 73% of the amount of child labor can be explained by one variable, which is just GDP.
Yeah. As people get wealthy, the child labor goes away, and people make laws against child labor because it's politically good, right? People like the feeling of making the laws, like to vote for people to do that. But it's really hard to tell if it's the laws causing the child labor to go away or the child labor is causing the laws. And according to economic studies, it's actually the wealth that makes it goes away.
Listen, you fucking nerds have forgotten one important point, okay, which I'm surprised about because you're reading all these fucking boring ass studies. What about compulsory schooling? That had a massive impact on the reduction in child labor. Compulsory schooling could, in fact, have a big impact in the situation in these developing countries.
Unfortunately, we were making you go to sleep, so you didn't hear one of the studies because it's too boring to you because you can't be bothered to do research.
You're speaking for fucking 5 minutes. Boring as fuck.
No, it was like I said, compulsory education laws and minimum wage laws had less than a 5% impact on high school attendance, and child labor was something like, I think it was 7%. I didn't write that.
Sounds like you're just picking a detail out of the hat to try and make your point. Load of bullshit.
Wait, you realize you know where that quote comes from? Do you know where that quote
Golden
that you
and
just read
Katz
off?
2003, yeah, economists.
That quote is by Edmund, the guy that did the study that I just linked.
Okay, well, let's look at a different study.
I'm not clear that your study is
Wait, stop for a second.
Fucking demolished. You're struggling, both of you.
Stop. I didn't.
Also, you didn't post it.
Wait, stop. I didn't hear what Eris said. Could you say that again?
The quote that he did is from someone named Eric V. Edmonds, right? Who was the research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research in Cambridge.
No, this is from Golden and Katz 2003.
Floundering.
It wasn't a quote.
Floundering. He's how they flounder. Oh dear.
Eris, I'm really sorry your partner didn't be more
Silence.
helpful to you.
Silence.
Feel bad for you. But yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not silent. I'm saying what she's saying simply isn't true. It's from a different
Eris,
study.
your description of
the same thing,
the study didn't sound like it actually supported your argument. The conclusion was something like, well, the labor laws and the poverty going away are sort of have to go hand in hand. But I mean, it doesn't really establish.
Is that rising incomes are associated with improvement. However, these factors all lead in declines to the economic activity of children in the long term, right? And
rising wages are
general,
associated with
the
improvement in child labor.
This study was actually what was used as evidence for child labor laws in the international world, right? You guys are using arguments that were used literally.
Does it establish causation, though? Does it establish that the law is actually okay? How does it do that?
Yes, how does it do that? I mean, like you didn't post the study, and so we would like for you to explain it to us then.
Yeah, it's in a PDF. I tried to post it, but it didn't work. 1 second. Chud, you can take over while I do this. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, listen, clearly you guys are floundering a bit. Eris has caught you out a bit there, and now you're desperately trying to see what the study she's talking
I'm not
about.
floundering. I want to know what her study is.
Projecting a little bit there.
Yeah,
no, so listen, you guys are falling over each other to get your points out. It's kind of embarrassing for you, but it is what it is.
You haven't made any points.
I just want an answer. No, I have. I just want an answer to my earlier question. Do you think, yes or no, a 6-year-old, should there be any law preventing a 6-year-old from going and signing a contract and working?
You already explained this. You
didn't answer me. You just went on.
The answer is no.
Massive diatribe.
The answer is no. We already answered
them if there isn't a law to stop them, though.
To stop them is not wanting to do it. It's just terrible. People usually don't like doing things that are terrible,
but you're
or
just
making their kids do
relying on
things that are
parents.
terrible.
You're just relying on parents doing the right thing.
Stop them
I think that's stupid. I think that's insane. Like, some parents are not going to do the right thing, and that's why you need
some
laws in
parents
place
are not good parents. But most parents
you need the law
care about their kids more than anybody else in the world, than any lawmaker, than any activist.
There's loads of what about abusive parents? Do you know abusive parents exist? Do you know abusive parents exist? Have you heard of abusive parents before?
Of course, no one is saying you're not.
You know what else exists?
Children from
abusive laws.
Okay, stop. Okay,
abusive.
Stop. Okay, wait. Okay, so I can't hear myself think. So the question was asked: do you know that abusive parents exist? So I would like to hear either Fabian or Leslie's name respond to that.
Yeah, he can respond, and then I can
abusive
answer the original question.
parents exist, but most parents care about their kids, and I think generally speaking, parents care about their kids more than anybody else in the world,
It doesn't
more than
matter what most
lawmakers,
parents do.
more than activists,
You
more
need
than
to
the UN.
look at what abusive parents do and consider what they're going to do and have laws in
ChudLogic.
place to make sure kids aren't harmed.
Okay,
You can make.
ChudLogic.
I have no
Scott.
problem with laws against child abuse. Laws that
Right.
say parents can't hurt their kids or torture them or
child
or
labor
do
laws
things that
are
are
part of
unnecessary.
child abuse laws. Don't you realize
But
that?
a law
it's a
that
subset
just
of that.
arbitrarily excludes an option for a family that may be their best option. That may be, you can imagine being something that a parent who really cares about their kid makes them do because it's the best option, because the alternative is
Yes.
worse. I don't see any reason to make a law against that. I don't
Your
see any
argument is
reason to
literally
doubt that
most
parent.
parents love their kids, so we don't need to worry about it. And that's silly. Like, obviously, there's going to be some parents that act badly, okay? And we need to bear that in mind. And that's why we need strong labor laws, because children
Laws
cannot
against child abuse.
themselves.
Those two are not the same
Why should
thing.
we have child abuse
Yes.
laws if
we already
parents
said-
always
Wait,
protect their
I'm
children?
sorry. Everybody's talking at
I've
the
been
same
trying to
time.
answer this.
Okay, Fabian, you want to answer that question?
Yes, I'm just trying to answer this. You keep trying to conflate child labor laws, right, with all laws in existence and how we want no laws whatsoever, because I'm assuming you think that anarchism means no laws when it means no rulers, right? We're talking about economic laws. We're talking about laws that are enforced in an entirely different way, right? Which is not what the debate is about. You're trying to push this debate into a different direction because you're floundering. And Aristocracy is
I'm not
doing a
floundering
great
at all.
job.
I've asked you one question and you're fucking floundering like I've never seen before.
Oh my God, dude, we've answered your questions like 10 times and we've let you control
Okay,
the
can we-
flow
can
of
we
this
go
you
back
debate.
to
don't
the
You're such a
study?
rude
look like you've answered the
asshole.
question.
Okay, so
What
can we
does
go
it
back
look
to
like,
study
Name one
since you did
question we
quote
haven't.
you did quote Eric Edmonds, right?
I did not.
Before you
Please
quoted that
stop
other
saying
person.
that. Please
Okay,
stop saying
no,
that.
you did. And
No, I did
so
not.
the conclusion
I
that
did.
Eric
Please
that-
stop lying.
The
Please stop
conclusion
lying.
that Eric Edmonds, I'm speaking, the conclusion that Eric Edmonds comes to in the study, right, which I linked for you. I had to upload it because it's a file, right? It's a PDF if you can open it right now, right? The conclusion that he comes to, if you don't want to read it right now, okay, is because of this impact of child labor on economic growth, there is a strong case that child labor policy should be a part of policy efforts to promote sustainable development without appealing to human rights issues, even though those issues can be important, right? He literally argues. You guys thought that we were going to come here and say like, oh, like poor children, it sucks that they have to be in the chimney, right? No, like it's being demonstrated by science over and over and over again, right? And this study is considered literally the best for this.
Okay, right, but I need
And
his
that-
actual.
and
Could you
It's
give
not
me?
a very strong, like,
Eric
I just
saying
look at the
you're
study
right?
in detail.
You're
but-
That
Wait.
it's for the good of an entire society, right? That child labor
Aristocracy.
laws be enacted, right?
Aristocracy. Listen,
That sounds like pretty
what
like,
I'm doing-
weaselly
Wait,
language
okay,
to me.
one
Like,
second, one second.
child labor
Okay,
laws need to be part of a like.
Okay, we gotta have one of you talk, Fabian or Leslie.
one second. I'll be real quick, right? Number one, you keep calling me a liar by saying that I'm quoting Edmonds when I'm telling you that I'm quoting a different economist and a different study, and then I'm not quoting that I read
You quoted
studies.
Edmonds right
and
before him.
I quoted Edmonds in a different
Yes, you
one
did.
where I said that 73%
So you did
could be
quote
explained by variation in GDP.
So you did quote
But
Edmonds.
again,
Thank you.
that's not a
Okay.
quote. That is one study that I'm using. You were saying it to another. If you were confused in that,
No.
that miscommunication can be
No,
swept
I-
aside and we can understand that. The
Okay.
second thing is that I
So you
don't
did
want
quote
to
him.
hear,
That's what I was saying.
again, no, I
You
didn't
quoted
quote
someone
anybody.
that disagrees with your entire point and comes to the conclusion that we're correct. And
Right,
you're
because
incorrect.
because here's
your
the
own
funny
point.
thing. I'm not engaging in logical fallacies of appeal to authority. What I'm doing is I'm using data to support arguments that I'm making. It's called a deductive argument. What you're doing is saying
Nerd shit,
this
aka nerd
guy.
shit.
What you're doing is
That's
saying
not an
this
appeal to
guy,
authority.
says I'm right, therefore I'm right. And what I would like to do is I would like to hear you make an actual
No,
deductive
I'm
argument.
breaking down an argument that you used when you quoted him.
No, that's not what's happening.
Eris, what is okay? So he thinks that child labor laws are one of the things that are that help improve the child labor situation, along with other economic improvements.
Yes. which is
Why?
consensus.
What's the methodology? Like, why did he come to that conclusion?
I mean, it's mentioned extensively in the study. It's incredibly complex.
Well, if you read this study, well, you should be able to paraphrase
Like
it to us.
we got time.
I'm asking for
Why are child labor laws?
Okay, I'll
plus
give you an
other things
example, right?
better than
One of the
just other
examples, right, is that they actually made, and they enacted this law, I think, in the United States in the late 19th century, where they made it so that it was actually more expensive to hire children, right? And they did that, right, by when you hired adults, you had an adult got injured at the time, right? The adult was responsible for their own injury and their own health and their own care and all that stuff, right? So they made it that the company, whatever company that they're working for, the workforce is actually the company is actually responsible for the care of the child. So even though they could pay children less, it ended up being more expensive, and that was a consequence to leading directly, right, to making children just not as useful to hire anymore. Right, that's a child labor law.
Okay,
fine, but why?
This is why
what's the evidence that that's a good thing?
Child labor laws.
What's the evidence that that helps?
Argue child labor laws from an ANCAP perspective. I mean, I'm not an ANCAP, right? But I could actually just say that, like, you know, that children should be able to work. They should be able to work in mills. They should be able to work in these really like nasty conditions. But they should they at least need to go to school 2 hours a day. Okay, that's a child labor law. Something as minimum as that. Right. So it's like I feel like just by agreeing to this debate, you guys like just set yourself up. I was completely shocked. You guys were so confident. You're just going to come here and dominate.
Laws. You're describing laws
you want
that
to
would make it harder
laws,
to hire
though.
children.
You want to abolish these minimum
why that's going to help.
protections.
Like
you want to
anything
abolish
you do.
these minimum protections. That's what you said. You said you want to abolish child labor laws.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to actually pick up and read your study, but for whatever reason, the file seems to not work. I mean, you can see I'm doing it on stream. I'm downloading it.
If you disincentivize hiring children, yes, you will have less child labor, but you will also cause economic hardship for those families that depended on their children working, or those children that were depending on their jobs to work.
Give them
so
welfare.
What's the evidence that that's going to be a net
benefit? Give them
benefit?
welfare instead. Easy, problem solved.
These are not places. These places don't have welfare.
That's why it's always done in tandem with other economic laws. It doesn't happen by itself.
Easy
right?
peasy.
You do it with welfare laws, or if you don't like welfare, then you could do it with adoption laws.
So you have a way to improve the economy and make everyone richer. Why is it better to also have child labor laws instead of just making the economy more
The government gives the
rich?
family some money, and the kid doesn't have to go work at the fucking mill and get their fingers cut off by some bullshit machine. Easy peasy, problem solved.
Sounds great.
Debate.
Why would you don't need the child labor law to do that? You just need to make them wealthy.
No, so here's another thing.
People more easy peasy.
Right. So when you bring up, like, it's interesting that you bring up like textiles and you bring up like the cotton and things like that, because that is a very small minority of what child labor is. Right. The majority of child labor exists in agriculture and in the service industry. The highest country in the world in terms of percentage of child labor being done in manufacturing is India at 14%, and almost every other country is under 10%. Right. So I understand that you're targeting this specific type of child labor, but again, like it's really important that you understand
child labor you would allow.
Also, the most common employers of children are their parents.
Well, see, the thing
most children are employed by their parents.
Right. And the thing is that agriculture has a higher rate of injury than does manufacturing. And agriculture is the most common form of child labor. Right. So when you start doing things like, oh, we need to stop these children from working in sweatshops and create laws to do these things, again, even if they get legitimate child labor because it was targeted towards what you deem to be more dangerous, you're actually incorrect. It's agriculture that's the real problem here and not textiles, because the rate of injury in textiles is 9%. And funny enough, the rate of injury of a person on a football team in high school in America is 13.5%. Being in a local football team in America is more dangerous than working in a ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh, right? So again, these are good opportunities for children, and these are ways that children can improve their lives. And the fact of the matter is that the reason they do this is because they're poor.
Last username.
Let's get rid of that too. It sounds dangerous. Get rid of that too.
Okay, last username, right? You brought up as a way to argue for your position that as a way to kind of like downplay the type of exploitative labor that these children go through, right? That it's usually being done by their parents. Children are usually employed by their parents, right? Which is, you're 100% correct on that. But children are on average abused the most by their parents. Do you know statistically who in relation rapes little girls the most?
Yeah, parents are a big source of abuse. Do you think
their fathers,
that these children, that these parents are making their children work?
Their fathers are actually
as a way to abuse their children?
The majority of child pornography is created by their fathers.
Do you think that the parents making their kids work is actually just abuse, like because they're mean, like dysfunctional parents?
Not
Or do you
necessarily.
think it's just because
but I think that there are
for
certain
economic
types of work that
reasons?
would be abuse.
So then what's the point?
Therefore,
okay, maybe the
there are
parent is
certain
being-
types of work that would be abuse, right? So if they just say,
They're
I don't
unpleasant.
know, how,
I acknowledge that.
like
I don't,
help,
I don't
if they
like
just
that
say
kids
like,
have to
hey,
work on their
like
parents'
help in the
farm to
store
survive.
after school or something, right? I wouldn't
if a kid
consider
has
that
to work.
abuse, okay? But if they're like, okay, work in our chimney, right, and work with all like the ashes from Chernobyl, even though you're probably gonna get some weird disease after. Okay, and we have 8 other children, which is pretty common in areas where child labor is a pandemic. I would consider that pretty abusive.
I don't think it's abuse if it's the best option available for the family and for the child. I don't think that's abuse.
But it's being demonstrated over and over again that it is not the best option available. We have other
How?
options.
You've yet to make an
feed-
argument on that.
We have
Yeah, I've
we have
never
other
heard-
options to
Seen
feed
any demonstration
children,
of that.
right?
Maybe
What-
you
which
should
other
is-
options to
rather than
feed
just
children.
talking all the time.
And if you do, great, then do it. But until it's done, don't sabotage.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Like maybe there is a way to make everyone
rich.
rich. Sure, we can talk about that.
But they have been done.
but do that.
We've done it in the West. We
we have
demonstrated
done it in the West.
We've
We did,
lowered-
and
we've
in
reduced
child labor
and
laws-
it's happening. It's happening
And,
everywhere
and
else.
again,
too. Poverty is going away.
the data has shown that child labor laws had little to no statistical difference.
I don't know why you say the data when the
I
entire
don't think
consensus
that's true.
is
And also,
it has been
compulsory
shown.
schooling,
It
you
has
would
been
not
shown.
schooling.
It has been shown that compulsory education laws, child labor laws, and minimum wage laws had little to no effect on child labor and rates of child labor. What has an effect on child labor is the amount of money that a person makes. So if we look at 2013 World Bank, if people make 600 to 2K, the child labor rate is roughly 34.04%. 2K to 6K, a little over 7%. 6K to 11K, a little under 5%. 11K to 24K, 0.16%. And when the average income of an adult is above 24K, it's 0.01%. The root problem
my
here
God.
is poverty.
Do you think that there's one solution for poverty?
I never said that there was one solution for
No.
poverty. Why would I think that?
Did I say that you said that? I'm asking.
Well, again, I said no.
Okay, so you don't, right? So,
Mhm.
do you think that there could be multiple solutions to poverty that work together and that they have an entourage effect that
Sure.
when you put them
Absolutely.
together, they end up being stronger?
Absolutely.
So why do you think child labor policies can't be a part of that and can't be useful?
Because we
All of
haven't
the data
seen-
that have
don't
been
see
given
any,
you thus far. That's
don't
why.
see any logical or empirical reason.
But the experts
the
that
case.
go through these data that know
I don't
way more
want an
than any of
appeal
us
to
in this
authority.
room.
I just
That's
want a
not
good
an appeal
argument.
to authority.
You're
It's
doing
not
an
true.
appeal
The
to
experts didn't say
yourself
that.
on that
Appeal to
basis then,
authority.
because you're appealing to the authority of your studies.
You
You're
don't-
doing
you
the same
don't-
thing you're accusing us of. What are you
That's
talking
not
about,
what an
you
appeal
fucking
to
nerd?
authority is, Chud. You call me a nerd, but you're
You are.
honestly
You're a
you're
nerd.
just like you're
It's
not
boring.
you're not able to keep up with aristocracy in the two of us. No, what I want to hear is an actual argument. When you say this expert says this in their conclusion of their study, what I want to hear is this data is the reason why this occurs, and then make an argument from it. I've
Okay,
yet
I
to hear
could,
an actual
but I would have to
argument
read
from
the entire study. It's so complex.
Yeah, that's
really
what I
would.
did. We did research.
No, I
and
would
we
have to
had
read the
data.
study on
We
here.
made
Obviously, I read
arguments.
the study when I was
You did
preparing for
research
this,
to argue for
right?
13-year-old
Do you want me to
strippers.
read the entire
Crazy.
study on stream? Does Dylan really want that? Dylan, is that what you want? You want me to read the entire study?
just want you to
on
make an
stream?
No, we
Wait,
want you to
wait.
read it off
Do you-
stream
do you want
before
me-
the
people
debate,
who
and then
dedicate
sound
their
off.
entire
Stop.
life?
I've got a
Stop,
serious
stop,
point.
stop,
You spend
everybody.
30
I've got a
years-
serious point.
Everybody stop. Thank you. I don't care what I want. You can read what you want. You can make however arguments you want. I'm not going to advise you on what you should or shouldn't do. That's up to you.
Why do you want to
I
destroy
also
the
really
labor
don't
market?
want Chud to call me a nerd, okay? I'm trying to impress him here.
Why would I answer such a weird and loaded question?
Well, you know, if you've done all this fucking research and all these books, you should know.
I
What do you
should
think happens
know
if you
what
let
the fuck I'm
child
talking
labor
about.
law? If you let child labor law start happening, what do you think happens to the employment market?
Well, again, like I showed in Costa Rica, right? The child
I don't
labor
care about
laws are
Costa
not.
Rica. I
I
don't care
know
about
you
Costa
don't
Rica.
care
Let's
about
talk
data.
about America. Let's talk about
Okay.
America. You want to
Awesome.
abolish child labor laws, correct?
In America? Sure.
Yes.
For different
Okay.
reasons. I mean, yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
So if you
Because
abolish
they're
child labor,
pointless.
no, listen. Receive mode on you. You've spoken enough, nerd. Shut up. Here's the situation. Okay, you allow a source of labor that is inevitably going to be cheaper to come to the fore in the labor market, what do you think companies are going to do? They're going to start employing
I'll answer that
cheaper
question
forces
for you.
of labor.
Yeah, it's
going to be
awesome.
cheaper and
it's
worse.
Awesome. So there's this thing in the market where that used to happen, right? Thomas Sowell actually talked a lot about this. It was his first
Thomas
job.
Sowell, okay,
And
yeah.
one of the things that he used to do when he was young to make a little extra cash is that he used to go into movie theaters, right? And he used to take people to their seat in a movie theater, and it was like this really cool thing, and it was a very cheap job. But once minimum wage laws came in, it was not actually child labor laws, but once minimum wage laws came in, what occurred was that job was no longer economic.
Welcome to the studies. This is just an anecdote.
Okay.
I'm so
more
now I can
generally
only
speaking,
answer questions with studies now that you attack me for doing. So basically, no matter what I say, you're just going to meme and yell and not listen to me.
It's the position that you need to get a fucking Thomas Sowell and some job he did. I don't fucking care about any of that.
So in a free market,
Why do you ask questions if you don't want to hear any answers and no answer is satisfactory?
Hold on. Allow you to speak.
I want to address the appeal to authority thing. Like, first of all, I mean, you guys appeal to authority plenty of times. You literally did quotes, and then when Chud was like, "Who is this guy?" Okay, you're like, "He won a Nobel Prize." So, anyways, an appeal to authority doesn't work. It doesn't work when you are appealing to an expert in the field that you are arguing, right? Anyways, in the study that I linked you, right? If you just skim through it, right, it also says that childhood labor was linked to poor public health, and children faced higher rates of accidents than adults in industrial jobs. Child laborers were also shorter. They weighed less, even when compared to their counterparts that were in the same economic position as they were, right?
None of this contradicts what we're saying. You're just saying child labor is bad. We agree. It is bad.
We agree.
It's not the issue.
You want to remove all the safeguards that exist for child labor.
The issue is, what do you do about it?
You want to allow it to happen. You just are.
You want to allow it to happen more freely.
You want to get rid of it.
What we're saying is your solutions aren't helping. And if we want to stop child labor, what we need to do is attack the actual problem. And instead, politicians want to make sweeping legislation and laws, and organizations want to work together to make laws. And often these have negative consequences that make the problem worse because they don't actually address the problem, which is education and poverty. And I know Aristocracy is going to be like, but compulsory education is a child labor law. No, it's not. They're two different things. What I'm saying is that you actually need to solve the problem, and that child labor laws do not solve the problem.
Child labor, yeah, that sounds intelligent.
Oh my God! Well, if you had listened to anything that we had
said,
it's interesting that you guys. I remember when you guys agreed to this debate, I was like shocked. I was like, "This is crazy, right?" Because it's one of those truisms that everyone normally accepts. Okay. But, I was intrigued, and I did some research, and I found out that there's actually a push by far-right Republicans to resurrect child labor, right? And it's kind of based on, like, these two key myths that they have to do with history, right? Which I was like, oh my God, history, that's my thing, that's so cool. And first, it's like that markets, not the government, wiped out child labor in the early 20th century. And second, that child labor was beneficial to the children's quote-unquote work ethic, okay, education and employment prospects. So the history of child labor belies these assertions, and their rise in high political circles threatens to resurrect a problem in the United States and has developed world largely eradicated a century ago. Right? Quick
question. Yeah. You nailed me down in the beginning of the debate and forced me to use Google's definition of child labor. And so can you actually substantiate the claim that quote unquote far right people somewhere want to bring back labor for children that you said must be inherently exploitative? Or are you simply talking about youth unemployment and now you're switching the words when you get to talk about the baddies on the right?
I'm not switching the words. I'm using their words.
So they specifically say we want exploitative
because they are advocating specifically against child labor laws, right? Not youth employment laws. They're against child labor laws specifically.
Okay, so
I think child labor laws are bad, even in developed countries, and they're at the very least unnecessary and probably even destructive, because there's probably situations where it would be really good for kids to get a job. I mean, there's lots of jobs that kids get that we let them get, and it doesn't seem to shock anybody, right? We don't recoil in horror at a paper boy or, a child actor or, a lemonade stand.
Well, hang on a sec. If you want to talk about child actors, abuse in Hollywood is absolutely rife. Corey Feldman talked about his experience of abuse as a child actor. So, you want to make that easier by abolishing the labor laws that exist. So you were literally
so you're talking about
child labor laws that are stopping that
and sexual abuse.
That's not true.
Is a problem not just with children in Hollywood, but with adults as well. And it's bad.
That's not true.
And we're not proposing that you remove the laws about that.
But
what happens if you're in a situation? I'll pose a hypothetical, right? You're in a situation where, we really need people to crack open peanuts, okay? And children are particularly good at cracking open peanuts. Okay? And it's really cheap to hire children, right? Because they don't need to fully earn their keep and all of that stuff, so you can pay them half as much. So, and everyone's really obsessed with peanut butter because we eradicated like a peanut allergy. So it's like a huge industry, and they start hiring, and then suddenly almost like most children, or say 60% of children, right, are literally being hired to crack these peanuts. Okay. And the only skill that they develop is how to like really gnarl the teeth on the peanut. Right. And do you think that's good for society? Wait, do you think that's good for that? What do you think is going to happen to that
I feel like
country,
that's bad
right?
for society because we're all going to get sick from gross children putting their mouths on peanuts. I feel like we're all going to get sick. Like the FDA would have to step in at some point and stop this if they're
obviously
using their teeth.
in this world.
Do you support the FDA as an ANCAP?
No.
Okay. Well then that would have to go, wouldn't it? With your ideal society, the FDA would be gone, so that would be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, there would be rating agencies.
You're using the FDA as a point, like you don't even want the FDA to exist,
and it's
you're an idiot.
The salaries of children in a labor market, in a free labor market, are determined the same way as the salaries of adults. They tend to get paid less only because children tend to be worse workers, right? They're kind of immature. They don't have a lot of skills, not very reliable and disciplined. So they're going to tend to be paid a little bit less.
Here's the other great thing for companies. Children cannot advocate for their own experience and for their own labor rights as adults can.
No,
so
but
abuse would be absolutely right.
Children can't do a lot of things. Children can't take care of themselves. So
sure, but
that's why
you're
we have
sending your kid
people
off
take
to
care of them.
fucking, the peanut factory or whatever it is. The parent's not going to be there. They're trusting the company to do the right thing. There's no law to stop the company from treating the kid badly.
I don't think you should be able to hire a child without telling their parents. You should still have to get parental permission to hire children.
Yeah, but then they could get hired at like a factory or something, and there's nothing that the parent's not there. So the parent's not going to know what's going on at the factory. There could be abuse that's engaged.
I mean, if they care, I assume they'll try to find out.
But now you're
what if they don't? But what if they don't? There's no law to stop
you could say the
that.
same thing about school. The parents don't see what happens at school. They could just be like
There's very
torturing
strict
those kids.
legislation that exists at school to safeguard
And there's strict
children.
rules about workplace safety and not torturing your workers.
Well, see, here's the funny
but
thing,
children
right?
can't advocate for themselves in the same way as adults can in a workplace. Whereas
Why
in
not?
schools,
They go home and they're like, "Mommy, Daddy, I don't like my job because it's painful." Like, of course, why wouldn't they?
What if mommy and daddy are like, "Oh, we've got 7 more children. Okay, go to work because we really need that paycheck."
You're making this point that they have to go for poverty. Well, if they have to work there and it's essential for the family to survive, then the family is not going to care that they're getting abused. They're going to send them the next day to take the money. That's your fucking point.
We're talking about rich countries.
Untie yourself up. Unlucky. Untie that.
Oh my God! Can Jesus Christ, Chud? So in this scenario where child labor laws we're comparing it to this ideal type where child labor laws work. We've already shown you that the child labor laws aren't doing anything, right? Child labor laws in Costa Rica, for example, again, like I said, 43% of everyone that is a child working in Costa Rica is illegally working against child labor laws. So what you're describing is the perfect versus
you want to get rid of child labor laws in America as well, you said. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I've described could happen, and there'd be no law to stop that from happening, would there?
There are tons of horrible things that happen in workplaces now. The difference here is that a child has the ability. The difference here is that a child has one or two parents that advocate for their rights. Other people advocate for their own rights. Do you think worker exploitation doesn't occur in America? Aren't you a socialist? Like, don't you believe in all of this worker exploitation?
The kids have to go to work because their family's poor. If their family's poor, there's a perverse incentive to keep sending the kids to the workplace, even if they're getting abused.
Which is why this doesn't make sense to talk about it in terms of America, because even if we got rid of child labor laws in America, there would be almost no child labor. Even if we did, it would still.
Okay, wait,
because of all of the studies that you said were too fucking boring.
Wait, I just want to tell you guys, we got about like 15 minutes left max. I just want to let everybody know that. So if there's any arguments you wanted to throw on the table, just giving you that warning.
Okay, look.
Yeah, go on.
As far as the developed world's concerned, there may be bad parents who make bad decisions for their kids, right? If you're a child and your parents are bad parents, that really sucks for you. Your life is going to be screwed up in all sorts of ways.
Unlucky. Get down to the factory and get those fucking shoes made, you little brat. I don't care if you're getting raped by the boss. Get on with it.
Because kids, all sorts of decisions have to be made for kids. What they're going to eat, where they're going to go to school, what friends, what they're going to do, who friends they're going to hang with. So if your parents are bad at making decisions for you, you're going to have a tough life. I don't see any particular reason that we need to make this particular decision for all parents, no matter what. I don't see why we should take this particular decision out of the hands of parents. We let parents make all sorts of other decisions, and we hope that we assume that generally parents are most likely to make the best choices for their kids.
Right.
But
this is the problem.
Parents that are making the best choices. Go on.
Chud, the problem here is that you're taking an extreme, which is an abusive bad parent, right? And what we're trying to just what we're trying to explain to you is that obviously there are abusive parents. There are ways to stop abusive parents. Right?
Laws that stop abusive parents. They're to stop abusive parents.
Chud, for once in your fucking life, take the cotton balls out of your ears and listen.
Okay, I'm listening.
No, you're just yelling every time I say something.
I allow you to speak. Please continue.
When the problem with using an extreme example of parents that are abusive to children is that you ignore the actual causes of child labor laws throughout the entire population. And the reason what we're saying is that child labor laws push children that are working predominantly. Yes, there are abusive parents that will take advantage of whatever situation they can to harm their children. We have to figure out ways to stop that. But the overwhelming
laws are a good way of stopping that, right?
Jesus Christ, Chud. The overwhelming majority of people, what happens when child labor laws are initiated in these situations where they're doing this because of poverty, is that they end up in the black market. They get sold into prostitution. They end up in jobs that are more dangerous and with less regulations that are not enforced by contract, that are not enforced by, you guessed it, laws, because we're not advocating of getting rid of all laws. We're advocating for getting rid of child labor laws.
Wait, are there any laws? Are there any laws that you believe in?
We believe in natural law philosophy, contract law, volunteerism. We believe in parental guardianship. We believe in the right to freedom of association. We believe in the right of freedom of movement.
Like, are there any kind of laws? Like, give me an example of a law, like a specific law.
Let's not get distracted.
No, it's not. It's connected. Okay, your guess murder, right? But don't people just murder? Plenty of people will still murder if it's against the law.
That's actually our argument about child labor, is that plenty of people will still put their children in child labor, like 43% of the child labor workforce in Costa Rica.
When I quoted your argument, I didn't quote it because it was a good one. I quoted it to make fun of it because it's a really bad one.
Oh, okay.
It's actually not true because murder is not something that people need to do or really want to do most of the time, right? Most people don't want to murder anyway. So you can make murder illegal and you don't end up with this massive black market for murder. But child labor in a place where the economy depends on children being able to work, you can't just make it illegal and expect it to go away.
I don't think that families should have to rely on child labor to survive. I don't think that they should. I think that there should be. We should set up.
Why do you think they're working?
No.
That's the point. You're saying more child labor is going to solve this. What I'm saying to you is that what would be better is to set up situations where families are provided for by the state so they don't have to worry about sending their kid off to potentially get raped by their boss.
There you go. Chud Logic. Congratulations. You finally joined the conversation, right? And that is the entire point of what we're saying is, while I probably disagree with your solutions, you're finally talking about solutions that could affect child labor as opposed to the ineffective child labor laws. I appreciate that you finally come over to our side and you understand that the issue isn't child labor laws, but it's poverty in those situations.
That's a very clever trick you're trying to do, but I'm not on your side at all.
It's not a trick.
I'm not retarded, on Ancap.
It's not a trick. Like, you just walked into it. It might not be what you meant to communicate. I don't know. Maybe you're just like word vomiting, but you now understand the real problem.
Accuse me of that. All you've been doing is word vomiting all fucking panel. It's boring as fuck. Jesus. Studies, data. Listen, kids shouldn't have to work. Simple as. Enough said.
I agree. They shouldn't.
They shouldn't have to, but that's not what we're arguing.
But all of the arguments, there are some arguments that you guys provided that were pretty good, but they can be used against the laws that you believe in, right? Like murder laws, or I'm assuming you guys believe in child abuse laws, right?
I don't think that's true. I don't think a murder is an essential part of any economy.
Wait. Okay. Do you guys believe in child abuse laws?
Do we believe
Yeah.
that it exists? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Wait. Do you believe that it's a useful tool to reduce child abuse?
That what
Yeah.
is?
Do you want child abuse laws
Sure.
against child abuse?
Yeah.
I do.
This isn't complicated.
No, I was just trying to. I just couldn't
Okay,
quite understand
so-
what you were asking.
So if you're against like all the arguments that you were just bringing up, right, would also be good arguments against any form of law that protects children, like a child abuse law.
No, because
No.
child abuse is not, it's not something you need to do, right? You don't, your economy doesn't depend on child abuse. The welfare of a family doesn't depend on child abuse, but it might depend on child labor.
It can't. Okay.
Right? Child
The
abuse
welfare
is
of a
not going to be the
family-
best
The
option
welfare
for a child. but
you have never
working might.
demonstrated that the welfare of a family actually depends on abusing that child.
If it
Which
doesn't,
is
then
child
why are
labor.
they doing it? Why are they doing it? Do you like? This is what I was saying in the meeting. Do you think that
do
these
you
parents
think
just
people are
hate their
rational
kids, or they're
actors
just
and
they're just
moral? Do you
stupid,
think
and then
all
that's why they're
people are
making the kids
rational
work?
and moral actors?
I think that I trust a parent's choice for what to do better than someone from a completely different part of the world at a completely different wealth level making laws without really knowing how that economy works. Okay. I think the people living there who care about their own kids probably are the ones, the best people to make that
Well,
decision.
those are feelings that you have, and
They
they're
might be
not
wrong, but
actually
they're probably
substantial
right.
or demonstrated by
just-
science or any kind
So
of.
do you have science that
any kind of
demonstrates
consensus.
that the American politicians are and the trade laws that they create have a better understanding of the welfare and needs of Bangladeshi children in Bangladesh?
Hey, when did I
and
bring
their
up
parents?
Americans? I'm not American. When did I bring up like American lawmakers?
Okay, well, how about UK or wherever it is that you are from that is engaging in child labor laws and in terms of their import, export, trade laws, tariffs, and things of that nature? Can you demonstrate that they have a better understanding than the parents of those children in Bangladesh? Because you said it was against science, so I'm just curious.
The thing is, a lot of the thinkers, right? A lot of the thinkers that come to these conclusions are actually often from the communities in which child labor is being
Yeah,
perpetuated. Like
I'm asking for data,
right?
not standpoint epistemology. I don't want your Marxist philosophical drivel. I want an actual argument.
I'm not a Marxist. I'm a monarchist. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're
what
using
talking
standpoint epistemology, which comes from critical theory. It's fine. I want an actual argument or
I'm
data
just saying,
or
if
science.
you believed epistemology and actual studies and consensus, you would
Wait a
not be an
second, though.
Ancap.
You just wait a second. You just said, right? Why is it someone from the other side of the world is deciding what's best? And Eris is responding to that by saying it's people from within these communities that make this point, and then you're complaining about standpoint epistemology. Well, which
I'm
is
talking
it? Are
about
these people
parents
No,
of their
hey,
children,
is this
not about
perspective relevant or
cultures and
not? Because-
ethnicities.
Because they're within the fucking community. You're just dismissing it offhand when actually you just made a point that suggested you wanted to hear more from the perspective of the people there.
I know you have a difficult time with this, so follow me real quick. There's a difference between
I'll
a
try.
parent
How long's it gonna
and a
take?
child, a parent and a child, and the child is the individual we are talking about, and the economic circumstance is the one they are currently living in, right? Versus either a politician in another country from a different position, or even a researcher that we're appealing to because they happen to come from this community. It is not the same as the individual choices of the parent and the child and the bond and the relationship that they have.
But the problem you're missing is that if a parent is in abject poverty, they may not make the best decisions for the best outcome of their child. And without
Absolutely.
labor laws, right, that act
The
against the
parents
perverse
won't make the
incentive,
best
they could
decisions,
send-
so the governments will step in and make the right decisions for you.
yeah,
and one
absolutely.
decision
That has
for
to happen
everybody.
sometimes.
That's the
That
problem,
has to
right?
happen.
You're just
Yeah,
making
that has
one
to happen
huge sweeping
sometimes.
decision.
Yeah, of course.
You're saying it's always wrong.
Well, no, what I'm saying to you is that there has to be limits in place. And when it comes to the protection of children, I think an abundance of caution is necessary, just like with age of consent laws, right? I think it's important to have a line and we say,
Okay.
right, that's the line that we've best established. Okay.
Well,
and
sure.
we're going to stick with that. And,
But our line
there
is
might-
I mean, a
rational,
good
yours
line
isn't.
might be abuse, right? If you're doing something that like hurts your kid for no reason, that's illegal. But we have laws like that. We have laws against child abuse.
But if
So
they
what
if
I'm
they have
saying
good
to you-
reason, if they have good reason, you can hurt them.
if you have good reason that your kid has to do something that's unpleasant, like working on the farm to allow a subsistence farm to subsist, then I would not call that abuse. No, I don't
I
think
just
there
have a
should be a
quick
law
question.
against that.
Am I the only parent here?
I'm a
Aristocracy, do you
parent
have
as
children?
well.
You a parent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
I have
I'm just
I have
curious.
a dog. So
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Not pet parents. Come on. Real parents. So you have children, right?
That's offensive.
So
Yeah, I
you,
do. They're at
Chud,
school.
right? That's not offensive. Get the fuck out of here. It's totally different. Now, so you have children, right? Do you really legitimately believe that the state has a better understanding of what is important for your children than the love and the care and the attention that you have for your child? Do you legitimately believe that?
Yeah, but that's not the case for everyone. Whilst I think, but then I, align with the idea they should go to school. They need to focus on their schooling. A job could just be a distraction from that. I think an important education is a really good foundation for a good existence in life. And that's why it's so important that kids have like compulsory schooling and they're prevented from working, which again goes against the perverse incentive that poor families would have to send their kids out to work rather than send them to school.
Right, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking if you believe with certain policies that the state is enforcing currently. What I'm asking is, do you trust yourself more or a politician more to know what's right for your children? I'm just curious.
I don't look at it like that. It doesn't matter what I'm looking at it from the broad societal perspective that there are some parents that will do the right thing and some parents that will do the wrong thing. And some parents would send their children to work.
Wait, the argument that you're providing is an argument against any form of child abuse law. Right? Like, because I'm assuming, Fabian, you're a really good dad. Okay. I'm just going to assume that, right? You seem like a nice guy. Okay. So you're probably not abusing your child. You're probably a really good father to them, right? Does that mean that we shouldn't have child abuse laws? Right? Does that mean that we as a society could say there are some people that are bad parents, so there are at least some limits?
Aristocracy.
That's all a child labor law is. That's all a child labor does.
You gave me the respect to say that I'm probably a good father. So give me just a little bit more respect and stop straw manning my argument. Right? We're not arguing against child abuse laws. There's a rational difference between these two things. Right? We've brought up several reasons why there's a rational difference. What we're saying is that they're
just demonstrating that your argument is fallible because it can be used against things that you also believe in.
No, we can't, because there's absolutely different rationales between those two things. And I set up an entire framework.
But just because it's more libertarian, or it creates more economic use.
You might have been lost in the sauce when I was saying it, right? But I gave you an entire explanation of libertarian philosophy and the rights of children, right? I'm not going to go over that again because I know it'll blow Chud Logic's brain.
Do you think children can be abused without them being aware they're being abused?
Absolutely.
Okay, so a child could be in a workplace and be taken advantage of and being abused and might not be aware of it, okay? Especially if they're younger.
Absolutely.
Right? So the point there is that if a family is poor, they may disregard any abuse they're receiving, or they may not even know about it because the child isn't voicing it. So that's why a child labor law is important, in order to prevent that situation from occurring in the first place.
Right,
See?
but the problem is that
because child labor
Wait. I can't. I have no clue what was just said. Okay, who was asking a question? Can they restate it, because I didn't even hear it?
Chud was asking me a question.
Okay, Chud, ask the question, and then Fabian will be the one that responds, nobody else.
Okay, it's really simple, right? Do you have to go over it again, or do you remember, Fabian?
No, I remember. The problem here is that you're equating you slip a few pieces of logic, and I understand you don't like nerd shit. But the problem is that you insert child labor law as a reason, but none of your evidence has actually demonstrated why child labor law is necessary. What all your evidence does is support why child labor in manufacturing and in dangerous jobs and in jobs that can be exploitative is bad. That is not the argument. We have said multiple times that we don't like exploitative child labor. What we are saying is that child labor laws are not an effective means of stopping it, and that often they have negative consequences that can be worse for the parents and the children involved.
Well, if you're desperate enough, if you're in a desperate situation, you could allow your child to be abused by their employer. Or more simply, if you're in a desperate situation, you could allow yourself to be abused by your employer.
So would you be happy with an employer?
A good way to prevent that is to have employment standards.
Would you be happy
standards for safety on the workplace?
Would you be happy with an employer abusing a kid if it was the right outcome for the betterment of the family?
I don't see how that's the right outcome.
I'm not a consequentialist. I'm not a lefty, so no.
There are things that employers shouldn't do to you because there's no reason that they, it doesn't.
What if they do?
Make you more productive to abuse you in that way? And we have laws about workplaces being safe and the way employees are treated to prevent that.
But you
And
realize your position.
you can,
of
but
getting
you
rid
only
of
get the
labour
benefit of those
will
laws
you'll
if you have a
create more
legal
of these
job.
situations. You'll create more of these situations where children are being abused in the
No,
workplace.
you
and
create
because of a
those
lack of
situations.
You
limitation.
created those
Because if you
situations. and we
drive
proved
child
that.
labor underground,
Not at all.
they don't get that protection. That's how they can
But-
get abused.
but
Oh, sorry.
time
Is
and
there
time
loads of
Then they have
underground
no
child
way
labour
of
in
getting any
America? I
legal
don't see
help.
it. Where's all the
Employers
underground
mistreat
child
them.
labour happening in America? That's this bad.
Again, if you had listened at all during this debate, you would understand that once people start making over $10,000 income per person, child labor essentially disappears regardless of child labor laws. It goes down to
Okay,
zero.
but then what you're doing is you're setting children up. But the problem is with your approach is you're setting children up to not make that much because they're not getting an education, they're not going to get a good job, and they're going to be trapped in a cycle of poverty. So your solution of just solving child labor by doing more child labor creates a perpetual cycle of poverty.
Actually,
that's never going to resolve
that's
this
not what the
issue.
data shows at all. The majority of individuals that work in
Saying
child labor markets
like to make it
throughout
sound
the
smart, like it's like the data like completely disagrees with you. The studies disagree with you,
well,
right? The people that you quote
you've
disagree
yet
with
to
you.
actually show any data throughout this
Yes, I
entire
have
time.
shown. You just don't like to read it.
You've just
Okay.
quoted conclusions
Okay.
from research.
We got to wrap this up. You'll both be given a period of time to do ending statements while I talk to the judges and we figure out who is the inaugural Hippy Dippy Tag Team Champions, HDC Tag Team Champions. We're going to first give it to Toontown since we allowed Market Justice Warriors to open up the first time.
Okay.
Chud, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think their flustering speaks for itself. Their positions end up with more kids getting abused, but they're Ancaps. What do you expect? That's it.
Okay. So, you could really see the core of the argument, particularly even though we demonstrated that there has been historical consensus, scientific consensus, who have gone through all of the data instead of cherry picking specific instances, right? The way someone like Gwyneth Paltrow cherry picks the instance where this weird stone putting in her vagina fixes her cancer, right? It's all of those things. That's not how data is analyzed. That's not how scholars come to conclusions, right? They go through all of this, right? They're obviously experts on the subject, and they come to these conclusions. And we can read these studies ourselves. The one particularly that I linked, right, by the guy you quoted, Edward, right? Like it was pretty obvious by what you said. And just in general, there are. When it comes down to it, it really feels like this is an argument about freedom, right? You kept honing down on this emotional argument about what a parent cares about their child, and they're going to be picking what's right. Because I think that you're imagining the situation where your child is sitting there starving, right? And they're about to die, but if you let them just work in that mill that day, they're not going to die. And so you're going to pick the lesser evil. That is not, on average, the situations that these people are in. We have come further as a society, right? We have thought of other solutions to poverty, right? There are plenty of other solutions. And this is one of those solutions because it creates long-term economic growth and allows children to escape the cycle of poverty by putting the majority of their time in education, right? Instead of skills like being able to piece out their nuts, like with their teeth. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm throwing it over to Market Justice Warriors.
I'm a little bit meaner in the way that I do these things, so I'll go first and let the nice guy go last username. So what we heard was Chud make memes the entire debate and not actually intellectually engage with anything that we said and just lie about everything. And Aristocracy, okay. And so can I have my closing statement? Can you shut up? So anyways, but Aristocracy, I kind of feel bad for you because Chud really... So anyways, I kind of feel bad for you because I feel like Chud really like swamped you down and it was kind of a 2-on-1 in terms of data. Unfortunately, I didn't hear a lot of arguments from you. What I heard was what you're accusing me of projecting, which is appeal to authority. What you were doing is you were saying, well, this person and the community agrees to these things, right? And unfortunately, what we're doing is not cherry picking data. What we're using is looking at actual research and making arguments to support, using this to support arguments that we're making, such as, the fact that in 1800, 1900, 1910, the child labor laws had no effect on child labor. We had, World Bank information. And of course, one of the big sources that you wanted to claim was the ILO. You made me Google things. And again, it proved my point. And so I think it's very clear from the argument that we've made that while none of us here really like child labor, the fact that we want to institute these laws, really, it just comes from a place of privilege, and it comes from a place of misunderstanding, and it comes from a place of not really doing the research when it comes to economics, as has been proven. And the best thing for these people is sometimes stuff we don't like, and the best thing we can do to fix those things is fix the economic conditions. And I just didn't. We barely heard a little bit of an argument from Chud at one point that finally addressed the topic, and he came over to our side, and I appreciate it.
And Eris, we appreciate, thank you for bringing a study and some argument, but you didn't really, all I heard was a conclusion from the study, and the conclusion didn't even sound like it was very confident in the concept that the child labor laws were actually important. It was really hedging that on child labor laws and this other stuff has to be part of a package of blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's not, just based on that, it's not very convincing. I'll take a look, but what we really need to hear is methodology that actually establishes the labor laws themselves as the cause of the improvement. We gave you a study that refutes that shows that the laws didn't correlate with the improvement, and that defeats that concept, that premise. So that's the problem. I'll take a look at the study. Maybe it says more, but I don't think there's any. You guys have any argument here?
Okay. Thank you both for participating in the first ever Hippy Dippy Championship Tag Team match. I am waiting for all of the judges to respond, and then we're going to have the first ever Tag Team Champions. You can talk freely if you...
Oh, now we can talk freely. What were we doing before?
Yeah, right?
To say. I'm bored of this. Come on, what's going on?
Too bad your avatars don't have crocodile tear support. That would really help your...
I do have tears.
The only crying I heard was from you nerds.
Also, chat, who do you think
I
won?
do have tears when I think about, if we lose this, that means that, there's literally going to be children being exploited all over the world. The stakes are so high. People think this is just some Twitch debate.
Eris,
Well,
streamers.
Eris,
Wait. We're streamers. We exploit children all the time. We take their money.
Right?
True.
Right? But
Mentally ill
aristocracy,
children too.
aristocracy.
Speak for yourself. My audience is very old, okay?
I think the exact opposite. I think we put out a very well convincing data supported argument that shows that if we keep pushing these child labor laws, what you're actually going to have is situations similar like in Bangladesh, where children were sold into sex trafficking and prostitution.
This is the thing. The dirty secret is that the experts have learned
why does
what
no one
we're
take
saying.
Ancaps seriously?
And that's why you only see the labor laws come up.
Data. Ancaps are a
They're
joke.
not necessary.
Everyone considers them a joke. They're the biggest joke ideology in the entire fucking political spectrum. Okay.
And jokes is all you have because we're right.
You are.
And autism's all you've got.
Have you ever played Rust?
I don't even know if you can say that.
I've not actually played Rust. And
okay, I genuinely think you should play Rust. I love Rust, right? I feel like I would really enjoy an Ancap society. I'm not going to lie to you, right? But it would turn me into a terrible person. I've seen it.
It would be great.
I've
It would
seen
be
it
beautiful.
happen in a real
Better health, better outcomes, better rights, better business, better technology.
It brings out pure
when you have
evil.
responsibility, real responsibility for the society you live in. Turn you into
We got a response. We got the judges' votes, and it is a split decision from the judges. A split decision.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Now, first, I want to say that, of course, the vote is for fun, and it does not dictate who is right or wrong on any issue. People know how this show works, and it's not an endorsement by me of whatever the position that wins, and I have to say that multiple times now, okay? So, the first vote is from the celebrity guest judge, Real Ranton, who voted for the Market Justice Warriors. I believe they made the better argument. The second vote is from Danabo, who voted for Toontown. And the last vote is from my favorite editor, Mr. Geek. And it's for, I'm sorry, it's just so hard to read. Sorry, I think there's a smudge on my screen. Yeah. Man, it's really on there. I can't.
This feels like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right?
Yeah. So Deal or No Deal, actually.
Oof.
Guys, it's so hard to read that. that mark. Oh, it's for Toontown is the winners of the Hippy Dippy Championship
It was
tag
obvious.
team.
It was
I like
obvious.
Dylan how you're more embarrassed that cartoons won than Ancaps.
It was obvious.
Right.
Let's be real.
Well,
no one's interested in that nerd shit.
Well, I'm embarrassed because I don't think you should have won. But anyway, you guys are the first ever tag team champions. Congratulations on being the first ever tag team championship belts. Getting them, we'll be shipping them out to you. We'll have them in 3D format to be sent to you guys. Congratulations.
Hey, maybe one day we can have a rematch and they could present just at least one good argument, because they didn't have any today.
You want to get blown out again? Let's fucking go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Chud Logic, you are a rock dragging down Eris for the entirety of the conversation.
I think Eris should get both belts.
Eris should
I
get
really
both
do.
belts.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
chat
if
speaks for itself.
they're gonna win, which obviously, like, let's be honest, we know you
Like
guys
you're
didn't
like
win.
like
But
Chud.
if they're
Like,
gonna win, Eris should get both belts because Chud was really dragging her down.
How much,
What did we do
how much
wrong? Should we
research
have,
did you
like,
do for this to
dabbled
just
and-
lose?
No,
How
you
much
know why
research
he
did you
dragged me
guys
down?
do?
Because he made me laugh so hard that I was like dying the whole time. Like I almost fell off my chair in the beginning.
to be
Seems
clear,
like even more.
I want to be honest. If I was the judge, I would have given it to them. I'm just gonna be honest.
Dylan, no one gives a shit what you think. Shut the fuck up, okay?
I get.
It's his show.
You know what? I
Oh,
recalibrated the votes actually. It seems
Dylan,
that
it's
one
your
of them-
show. You can do whatever you want.
That is true. I could do
Okay.
whatever I want, Chud.
Well, I mean, listen, mate. Everyone's seen what's happened, so if you want to change it because I've insulted you, so be it.
Eris is the new tag team champion. Congratulations. The first ever and probably only tag team champion. Congratulations, Eris. That's a mighty
Oh,
victory
shit.
for you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Like my dog.
2-on-1. You won 2-on-1, right?
Wow. That is a
Even
mighty-
worse.
I would
You had a
love
penalty.
to.
You had
I'd
a
love
Chud
to.
penalty.
I know. I would love to hear an argument from you, like a good one. But you did win 2-on-1, and that's an impressive feat.
I gotta be
Thank you.
honest. I'm gonna make the Mark Justice Warriors active in the tag team division because I want them to go for the belts again because I think I just
You should have a little talk with your judges, Dylan.
I should have a little talk with my judges actually. But I appreciate you guys for coming on and doing
Absolutely.
this and arguing for a position that I know is going to give you a lot of shit. And I know you got a lot of shit. And I know half the people who said you lost in chat just said it because they disagree with you.
Well, also, we tried a ton of different debate topics, and Chud would only pick one that made Ancaps look really, really bad. Like we even tried to throw them selling kidneys on the open market, and he didn't think that he could make Ancaps look bad enough with that. And so over and over and over again, we had to keep trying to find a topic until it got to child labor laws, which is one he thought he could win. And apparently he was right. It doesn't actually matter if you make a good argument or not. It only matters that child labor law is just something people like.
So I'm going to send the belts out to the new champions. Congratulations, Eristocracy. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say?
I really resented the part where my parenthood of my dog, was downplayed and acted as if that, is not as meaningful as a relationship with a child. So that's all I'd say.
Wonderful.
Very hurtful. My
I'm
dog
not
is very
sorry.
Would you make your dog get a job? I'd make my cat
Yes,
get a
but that's
job.
because she's a working dog. So
Thank you.
Okay. So is it different or is it same? I have a working
It's
child.
part of her definition. She has to.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. We're now going to go to the announcers for a short period of time, and then we're going to go to the main event that you all been waiting for, Destiny versus CTV. And I will also probably call you guys in private after this, my libertarian friends. So love you all. Thank you very much for coming on.